Welcome back, fellow geeks, to A Geek Named Bob Presents 100 Days of Horror. This is day 4 in video and day, 11 for actual releases, but I'm really behind on these things. I promise I'll catch up soon for like the 8 of you who care, right? So, I just got back from seeing the adaptation of Stephen King's The Dark Tower, which is my favorite book series, hands down. I've read it so many times that I started reading it back 2001 is the first time I read it. Read it through 100 times since then. I'm wearing my t-shirt now. Right now I'd show you all my books, but they're all kind of packed up in the back. So you have to just take my word for it how much I love this series. And they've been trying to make this movie or TV shows or however you want to adapt it for a very long time, with many people attached to it at various points. Ron Howard was on at some point. A bunch of others who I can't remember. I don't really feel like looking up. I'm sorry. You can do that yourself. Ultimately, it ended up with Nikolai Arcel, who's known for pretty much nothing besides writing the first Girl with the Dragon Tattoo movie from Denmark. Way back when, not the new one. So I, of course, very reticent to want to give all my support to this, because it's very hard to adapt this series, which isn't just the 7 main books in the series plus the 8th that's also flashback in the middle of the 4th, which is also flashback. But for the Stephen King universe, it actually connects nearly everything he's done. He built this multi-universe long before Marvel talked about it, in which everything relates in some way, some bigger than others. Like Insomnia is essentially a Dark Tower book without any of the Dark Tower characters. You have the creature from It. Pennywise is a portion of the series later, or a reference to Black House, the Talesman. Anything relates somehow besides the crossover towns like Derry being in a bunch, Castle Rock being in a bunch. All these worlds come together in relation to the tower, which is a very hard. So it's hard to take in the whole of that series and distill it into what could be one movie, a movie TV series with another movie. There's different ways I've seen that they're trying to adapt this. So they took a different route in adapting it. It's not a straight adaptation of The Gunslinger, which is the first book released in 1982, but takes them all over the place. If you're a fan of the books, you know this is kind of a sequel to those books, and if you haven't read them before, that won't make any sense to you, but it won't take you out of the movie, because it stands on its own in that way. And what's I was really impressed to see, it kind of stood on its own as a single movie, though they are wanting to make this TV show and another movie and whatever else they're going to do in the future. Since this isn't likely to do very well, though I'm hoping it will, and hoping it does enough to get those. If it stops right here, the story does come to a close, and I was really worried coming in and as it was moving along that we weren't actually going to get any sort of closure. We just end on a cliffhanger for something that might never happen. So major points in that way for the Dark Tower. So that's why it's not simply Dark Tower Part 1, The Gunslinger, or we don't have the drawing of the 3 announced yet, because it's not going to be just like that. This one takes a lot from the first book, various aspects of that, a lot from the 3rd book, much from the 6th and 7th, and smidgets here and there from others to create this cohesive little bit in the middle. That's a mixture of everything. It's more of like, the way I'm approaching it is I see it more of this adaptation is a streamlined adaptation of all this other works. So I really look forward to seeing next time when we get certain characters that we were hoping maybe we hinted at this time that do appear in the drawing of the 3 and become a major part of the series we don't get yet. It's Eddie and Susanna, for those who have read the books. We have no mention of them, no setup for them at all. It stands for Roland and Jake as they hunt down the Man in Black. Still using the name Walter in this case rather than going by Randall Flagg, which makes sense since they're also working on the Stan adaptation featuring, fittingly enough, Matthew McConaughey, since it's the same character in a completely different aspect. Of course, The Stand's one of those books where it does relate, thanks to Randall Flagg, our second big bad of the Stephen King universe behind the Crimson King. The eye little sigil on my shirt, who you've seen in the ads, who we won't meet until later on. He doesn't show up in here. Our villain is kept to Randall Flagg, with the King to be seen later on, presumably. But yeah, so that does work in that way. There's other things that don't work, that don't make this quite a great movie. It's just good enough. The writing by Kiefer Goldsmith, who he's written many things that you've seen, the Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, and various other works where he doesn't know how to write dialogue to save his life. So much is stilted and weird, and or it's expository when it shouldn't be, or just doesn't. It's not natural, like, at all, and that really drew me out of the movie. But luckily, we have several great actors on hand to make it work. Of course, Idris Elba as Roland, Matthew McConaughey as the Man in Black, Walter, Randall Flagg, whatever you want to call them, and the kid who plays Jake, who's our entry point to the story. I wrote down his name as Tom something, and it's bad of me not to remember, but maybe I'll pop it in there, or you can look it up. He's actually really good. He really holds his own against these two powerhouses of actors, and the three of them together do a fantastic job of making this bad writing work as best as they possibly can. They do sell it. Like, people complain that Idris Elba he's not Roland at all, but he really feels it. Like, he is the Roland from the books in spirit. Matthew McConaughey is absolutely perfect as Walter. I can't see anyone else doing that role. I really look forward to seeing him play Flagg in The Stand whenever they get around to getting that off the ground again, if that even comes to fruition, because it's one of those things like The Dark Tower they've talked about, started, stop. So that works. Like, we have great actors doing kind of bad dialogue. The story, in trying to mix everything together and trying to keep people from outside interested, and not completely in Midworld, but a mixture of Midworld and New York, it has its downsides and its plus sides, where it kind of feels loose going back and forth, and the stuff that's going on with the Man in Black. I personally would have liked a tighter story, maybe saying all Midworld, like the first book, and focusing through Roland, but instead we focus through Jake. So it might not be what people are expecting when they come in, but he does make a good entry point of trying to figure out what's going on, who he sees these people. But I think the movie itself actually stood just fine, just dropping us in the middle of the story, just like King did with the first novel, where we had nothing to start with, and then it filled in as the book went on, especially since he meets Jake in a different way in that, and then he has to fill Jake in on what's going on, and Jake fills him in on his side of the story. And that was a much more natural way than what we have here. But also, I can understand audience surrogate works different in books as it does in movies, where if you don't have that entry point into many movies, especially fantasy movies, it might not flow as well, especially since you're in the middle of a bigger story. But we do get the flashes, we do get the background, and so we do get enough fleshed out that it still keeps things moving forward. There are some issues with the way that's told, though. We pop in locations without any indication of how they matter, who's there, what's it called. There's a village that's a major plot point. They never say where they are, and the actions that happen there make sense to me as a Dark Tower reader. I know where they're at, and I know what's going on and why they're able to do what they're able to do there. But someone coming from outside, like, oh, okay, that's just awfully convenient. There's a lot of those points where things are awfully convenient. Oh, there's a portal here, we need this. There's this person here, we need them. And that really shows. When you have a 93-minute long movie, trying to get so much into it, those shortcuts are really glaring. Like in the Dixie Pig, which is a portion they take from the sixth book, is changed up in a completely different way, and like the characters there are vampires. There's no indication in the movie that they are, besides maybe some blood here and there, and what goes on at the Dixie Pig. Because it doesn't matter in the course of this story, but it's really a fantastic thing that's now, I guess, wasted for later forms, that I love in the books. One of my favorite sequences in the book series. And of course, it's not always about, oh, the book is like this, so it should be like this. I'm not one of those people. things are adapted in the way they're adapted. I'm a huge MCU fan, as like every movie person is, and non-movie person is, and those are changed completely, but they get the spirit of what came. This thing, I think, really tries to get the spirit of what the Dark Tower is when it's allowed to be it, when it's not trying to be a light version for audiences who might not know. And I can see why people wouldn't be coming out. The trailers were, I thought, were a little lackluster. It's hard to sell fantasy pseudo-western thing. It looks like you're dropped in the middle of something. Hopefully Stephen King's name is enough to get a lot of people out, but the reviews I've seen the headlines for, so I haven't read them until I'm watching the movie, have all been kind of not very strong either. So mine actually probably one of the stronger reviews out there, I believe, because I did enjoy this despite the issues I was talking about. I think it's a quality enough distillation of what we've seen before. It's in the other ones, but it's really like point by point by point. So I get the spirit of what they're going for, and so I'm not sure. But there's a question, like, who's the audience here? Is it the book fans who will be sad they're missing big things that they love that they might not be able to see, or in the way that things are told in a different way? Or is it the non-fans who are coming in, but they're also feel like there's a lot out there that they're not understanding, because they're not explained well, and it seems like this is like a tiny portion of something that it feels like watered down and shoved in 7 books shoved into one movie. Yeah, so even though I'm complaining, I still enjoy it. I still recommend you go out to see it. I think also what doesn't work is Nikolai's directing. It's really point and shoot. There's nothing really special with it. It tells a story it needs to tell without going anything big. Like, heck, the poster with the upside down New York is way more energetic and telling than anything in the movie, where there's no big shots like that. There's no movement through. But even though his directing is off, the production design I really enjoyed. Going back to the books, as I have been, the fact that Midworld is moving on is something I've had a trouble really seeing in my head. Like, we see another version of New York, we see elements of this world, but we know exactly how long what it meant by moved on. Like, what happened when, what do we see, what's left, and how people reacted. In this case, we do get to hear a little bit about that and see these remnants of what used to be there thousands of years ago of a world like ours, because it's never really clear when they go to Lud or Lud or whatever that it's still Roland's world. In this case, it seems to be. In this case, you see a amusement park named Pennywise, to throw in Stephen King references, because they're all over the place. There's even a video that came out a couple days ago where Sony put together like all the references to other things in there to try and bring in the Stephen King universe reference in there. So we get that we get that reference, but we see examples of the way that the world, and I really enjoyed that. Even though it kind of jumps around a lot, there's enough there I found really wonderful. But still, on the whole, it's entertaining, it's light, it's like the Dark Tower light. Hopefully there's enough of a glimmer in there for non-fans to want to go check out these books and read through them, and then find the connections in other Stephen King works. And since I'm going to wrap this on up with recommending you do go out and see it, I feel there's really good stuff possibly down the line for it. So even if one doesn't come quite where I want it to be, it's good enough where you spend your money, and hopefully enough money will go into it that we do get those sequels, whether it be in TV, which I think is preferable, or in movie form, because I really want to see Wizard of Glass on the screen. I want to see it so bad. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Go to ageeknamedbob.com, which will update soon, I promise. And also on Facebook and on Twitter to see other things that are going on outside of 100 Days of Horror, which kind of is my focus at the moment. But once I get caught up, we'll get back to everything else. So I got some good stuff coming down the pike, and hope you check it out. Thank you.